Hey everybody, it's Miranda here, and I'm going to do a tutorial on how I made these altered book stacks that I had showed, or not altered, they're handcrafted book stacks that I had shown earlier. I'd done it for my honey for Christmas, and I had a lot of people wanting me to do tutorials. I'm only going to do 3 of the books today, and I don't have a lot of the things that I used on these ones. I will put a link to the original video down below. I don't have any matchboxes, so I'm not going to be able to show you how I did that one exactly, but I mean, it's pretty basic. As long as I explain to you what I did, you will understand it completely. But I will be showing you the basics on how I did it. I know a lot of people thought that these were the paper mache book boxes from Michaels, and they're not. It's all handcrafted. So I wanted to go ahead and show you how to do that today, and I just used heavyweight chipboard. My friend Jennifer sent me a ton of chipboard a while back, and I have a lot of that left. And then the paper line that I used on these ones was the Tattered Time by DCWB. It is an older line that I'd had in my stash for quite some time, and I finally pulled it out. But the one I do today is not going to be grungy because I already got Chris one, and I just wanted to do like a girly one. But I know a lot of people really like this idea for the fact that it could be for a guy. So use whatever paper line you want. You know, don't pay attention to me adding the laces and stuff on this one. But at least you'll get the skeleton of how to do this and the basics. So I'm going to move this stuff out of the way, and then I'll be back. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim down my chipboard to the sizes that I want. I prefer to do different sized books. I think it looks better when they're all lined up instead of just like one flat line. You know, they kind of stagger going up and down. So I've cut some at about 6 by 6, and then I'm going to cut some other ones. And how I cut my chipboard is, and I actually need to change my blade really quickly, I think, but I just use my paper cutter, but instead of using, you know, the cutter part, I just use it as basically a guide for me to go in with my craft knife and cut. So, say I wanted this one to be, that one was 6 by 6, so I'm going to do this one 7 tall by like 5 wide. So I'm going to line it up there, and I know if this was to cut, that's 7 inches exactly. So I just take my craft knife, and I may need to change blades, y'all. I can't remember if I changed it recently. And I just use that as a guide and cut down like that, right up against it. And when you get down to the bottom, you might have to move your trimmer up out of the way to keep going down. But this is the easiest way that I have found to cut chipboard and have it be perfectly straight. And I prefer to do a couple of passes instead of trying to push all the way down at once. I find that it gives you a much cleaner cut if you do it this way. So just take your time and do as many passes as you need to. And I think I definitely need to change my blade because this one's not cutting too well, but I'll finish this one up and then I will do that. Okay, and then I usually pull that to see if this one will come out. So now you've got a nice clean edge. If there's any imperfections at all, you can just go in and sand it off. But that one is pretty clean. So that is how I cut my chipboard. So I'm going to go ahead and cut 2 more sets down. I think I'll put the measurements down below, but again, I mean, you make these any size that you want to. I'm never exact. Just make sure that your 2 front and back covers are the same size. Okay, y'all, I have cut all my chipboard out and most of the paper, but I'm going to go ahead and show you how I do that too. My measurements did end up being 4 3/4 by 5 1/2. That's these 2 right here. And then 7 by 3 1/2. I wanted some long skinny ones too. Typically these are the ones I would add the matchbooks to the center of, is the tall skinny ones. And then I did 6 by 6. Now when I cut my paper, I want to make sure that I give in 1/2 inch on each side, so that when I cover this, I can make it look seamless to the inside of it, like a real book binding. So all you do is cut your paper 1 inch bigger than your measurement. So 5 3/4 by 6 1/2, 8 by 4 1/2. This one's 6 by 6. So I'm going to cut my paper 7 by 7 to cover that one. And of course you will have to use 2 coordinating 12 by 12 sheets of paper because you can't get 2 7 by 7s out of one. So let me figure out, okay. I'm using Webster's Pages paper too, by the way. I'm just going to cut these 7 by 7. Okay, now I've got my paper for my 6 by 6 sheets. Now, for this binding, you can use whatever you want. You can use tacky glue, you can use ATG tape, whatever you decide to use. I always stick with Aleene's clear gel tacky glue. I love this stuff. It's one of my favorite ones. It's the only glue that I have found that really does dry clear. If you get some and it leaks out onto any other surface and you wipe it off, you can never tell that it was there. I can spill a ton of this on top of a paper and I can wipe it off and you will never notice that this glue was there. It really does dry clear. It's matte. It doesn't leave any, you know, like even I've found with glossy accents, if I leak a little bit off onto something, no matter how much I wipe off, you're going to be able to see that that glossy accents was there. So this is my favorite glue. So what I do when I'm adhering my papers, I usually use my old beat up craft mat because it's pretty gross, and I always use my finger to spread out my glue. So what I would do is I'm going to place it like that on there. So I'm going to add my glue to my chipboard directly. Again, use whatever kind of adhesive you like. My bottle is a little bit clogged up. I'm trying to get it to come out, but it's not working. I'll do that off camera, sorry y'all. But I just go around the whole thing and kind of like a little maze type deal like this. And then I never just adhere this directly down to the paper because I feel like it gives me lumps most of the time, no matter how much I try to spread it out. So I do it like that. Hopefully y'all can see that. And then I use my finger to spread this evenly across the chipboard. So keep a paper towel handy to get this off your finger when you're done. And that was a little bit too much, no big deal. I don't like to waste, so typically if I get excess, I will use my finger almost like it's a spatula and take off some and then put it on my next piece that I'm going to glue down, because I actually put a ton more on there. For some reason when I do tutorials, which is one of the reasons I haven't done too many in the past, I tend to make a lot of mistakes. So bear with me. Typically it's not full of mistakes when I'm creating a project, but something about the camera just sets me off. So anyway, just spread it around till it's all even and then just get it off your finger. And then just adhere it down right in the center of your square. So do that, and then I usually go around the edges with my paper towel in case any is seeping out. And I always let these dry thoroughly because when you're using a liquid adhesive, it does take a while for it to completely set. And if I try to like overlap my edges here, which is what I'll show you in just a few minutes, it just doesn't do it right if you haven't let your adhesive dry all the way. So just be patient. So just set that to the side. And then I've got my other one here that I'm going to adhere down. So again, the reason we do an inch bigger is just so that we have flaps to glue over, and I will show you that. I'm going to go ahead and adhere all of my papers to my chipboards, and then once they are completely dry, the glue is set, I will come back and show you how to do the back of it. Okay, y'all. I have let these dry pretty much, and also I forgot to mention when I am letting these dry, I do go in before it's completely dry, like right after I glue it down, and I just bend these up like this while it is wet. I don't know if it matters if you do it when it's wet or not, but I feel like it just helps it to form when it's wet. The paper creases better. So I did that to all of them, and then just kind of open it back up. Now, the trick to getting these to look good on the inside, like well, bad one right now. That one doesn't open up. The trick to getting them to look good on the inside is doing this on the center of it. Having it look, you know, seamless in there. and then you'll put another sheet of paper in here to cover that part up. So I'm going to show you how I did that. Pretty basic. I think there's probably a ton of YouTube videos on this. I don't know if I'm doing anything differently than what people have already done, but I'm going to go ahead and show you anyway. So what you do is you take scissors and you're going to cut at a diagonal. I don't do this perfectly. I just leave about 1/4 of an inch, I guess, between that point and then this line right here. So about like that. Just about 1/4 of an inch is fine. Definitely don't want to cut it like directly up to it though. Okay, so I do that. And now again, you can use whatever glue you want to use. I'm going to use tacky glue. And you're going to start adhering these to the inside of there. But there's also a trick to doing that too to make it look really, really seamless. So I just take my glue and just run a little line down the one that I'm going to adhere first. Doesn't matter which ones you do first. Make sure you get all the way up in there in that little area too. Okay. Now before I do that, I'm going to take my nail, and I saw this tip on another video, and for the life of me I cannot figure out where I found it at, but I'm going to take my nail and I'm going to kind of pinch this inward a little bit, just like that. Just kind of pinch it inward, if you can see that, on both sides. You're going to do this every time you adhere these down, and that really, really helps it to look seamless. Okay, so once you've done that, I start in the middle, just kind of press down and hold it for a second because we are using a liquid adhesive. Just kind of rub it. And then I go down to the ends and pull those inward as well. And if you were using a strong like double-sided tape, it'd be a lot quicker, but I really like to use the liquid adhesive. So just rub it down all the way across it. So you got a good contact bond between the glue, the paper, and the chipboard. Okay, and I do the same sides. Like if I do this one, I'll do this one first before I move to that end. I don't know why, but that's just the way that I've been doing it. Again, adding just a line of glue. Okay, and again, I'm just going to pinch those corners in a little bit. Really helps it to look seamless. Just pinching them like that a little bit. Okay. Again, starting in the middle, and I will actually zoom in just a little bit for y'all. Go. And then just go down to the ends again. And you know how I told you I like the Aliens glue? I don't know if y'all can see that, but there's a little bit of glue right there. I'm going to show you why I love this stuff. You just like rub across it with your finger and it's totally gone, like no trace of it at all. Like perfect paper. I really, really love that. Like I said, I am messy. Okay? So now I'm going to move into the tops of it. And this is where the pinch really, really counts, is when you're doing the last part. So rub those in really good. And then just do that little pinch there. Just like that. And adhere it down. And that is how you get those perfect seams in there. Okay, I'm going to do it to this end. Okay, so now you can see how all of our seams are perfect, and we will line the paper up in the center here so it will cover up, you know, these edges. So just let everything dry, and I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of mine, and I will come back when that is finished. Okay, I've got all of my pieces covered. You can see my seams are all lined up really well. Okay, now I'm going to cut the paper for the inside part of this. I usually just use these scraps left over from what I cut, so that way all the papers still match up, but just use them on the different ones. So I got to see my sizes. I will use this one on the inside of here if it'll fit. Yep, have to trim it down just a little bit. So that will go on that one. And then I think this will go on these. And then I might use this one again since I have so much scrap of it for this one. Yeah, because it'll fit perfectly. Okay, so just cut those down to size. Grab my paper cutter. And I usually just measure it really quickly. You can just eyeball it if you want to. I'm just going to do, for the 6x6 one, I'm going to do 5 1/4 by 5 1/4, I guess. Yeah. So this just needs to be trimmed down a teeny amount. Okay, and then I am going to ink up my edges with my frayed burlap distress ink. It's my favorite color, my go-to color. I have a ton of other distress inks, but the only one I use is frayed burlap or the black one, Black Soot. I'm just going to do the edges. I'm not going to really ink into it like you would typically do. And I'm not going to, usually I distress up everything, but since I want this to look pretty seamless, I'm not going to distress up the edges of this one. Okay, now for this part you could use ATG tape, and that would work just fine, but again, I'm going to use my liquid adhesive. Make sure you figure out how you want the cover of your book to be. I want this to show, so the binding will be right here. So I'm going to flip it this way and then line this up, straight up, y'all. Okay. And again, if I didn't mention, this is Webster's Pages Modern Romance paper. It might be a little bit from a different line because I keep all my Webster's Pages in one little drawer, so, but I know there's some Western Romance in here, really beautiful bright colored papers. And if you guys end up doing this, I would love to see what you came up with. If you would do a video response to this or just message me, I would love to see y'all's take on this and what you ended up with. And if you have any more questions that I didn't cover in this video, just shoot me a message and I'll be happy to help y'all. And again, any tutorials you guys would like to see me do, I have a list right now of about 5 that people have requested. Just shoot me a comment or a message, and I'm going to try to do a tutorial for everything that people ask me for. It's going to be the year of the tutorials. Okay, so that will be the inside of the book when you open it up. So I'm just going to go ahead and cover up all the rest of these, line them up, and then I will come back when the glue is dry and I'll get on to the binding. Okay, y'all, now that I've got the insides all lined up, I'm going to cut the paper for my binding. And I like to triple up on the paper on these because it makes it really sturdy. So I usually do, if it's not double-sided paper, which the last ones I did weren't, I did one sheet facing that way, a regular cardstock in the middle, just a plain generic one, and then the other one facing that way for the inside. These are double-sided, but I don't want this to show through, so I'm going to cut 2 of these out. And I'm going to put these on this one, which is 7 inches tall. Let me double check that before I cut it and ruin it. Yep, it's 7 inches tall, so that's how long you want your binding to be. So I'm going to cut this paper down to 7 inches. Okay, and how thick you want this to be just depends upon you. I think this right here, which is about 4 3/4 inches. Let me write that down so when I put the dimensions at the end of the video. So 7 by 4 3/4 for the binding on this one. If you're going to put like a configuration box in there, whatever, you might want to do it a little bit bigger. Use a bigger sheet of paper. But this one I'll probably just put one of those tins or something in. So I'm going to do it just 4 3/4 tall. Okay, and this one is 5 1/2 tall, so I'm going to cut my paper. This one has words on it, so I want to cut it lengthwise at 5 1/2 so that it shows. Was that 5 1/2? Let me double check one time. Yep. Okay, so that's going to be my binding for this one. I'm not sure what I'm going to do to the inside of this one quite yet, so I guess I'll do 5 1/2 by 6 on the binding of this one. So let me write that down really quickly. That will give me plenty of room to put more stuff in the middle of it. So this is already 12 inches. I'm just going to cut it down to 6. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get all of these matted together with the ones I want showing on the inside like this. So if you wanted to just do 2 papers, double-sided paper tends to be a little bit more sturdy, so I think I'll be fine with just these 2. So I'm just going to glue these back to back. ATG tape would be ideal here. Okay, everything is thoroughly dried, and I forgot to record and I started going on, so I had to stop really quickly. But what I do is once it's all dry, completely stiffened up, I take it and I kind of bend it however big I want my binding to be. Nothing perfect. I just kind of start bending my edges inward to create that. Then of course when you do the binding, you'll make sure these are perfectly straight. It'll give you a really nice solid line. So I'm just kind of determining how big I want each book to be. If you want to hold, like if you're going to do, I'm doing something different with this set than I did with the other, but like if you're doing the match boxes, you'll want to, you know, line it up like that and see how big it needs to be. If you're doing the configuration box, the same thing, but for these I'm just going to kind of do the binding first and then decide what I'm going to fill them with. So I'm going to go ahead and start adhering these to the book covers. So I'm going to bind these ones first and just make sure that everything is lined up. Like if things have writing, you know, obviously make sure that the writing is there in the center like that. So that's going to be the front cover, and then I made a little boo-boo on the back one, so this is going to be my back part of the book. So just line them up like that. And now again, I'm just going to use hot glue, and I pretty much just eyeball it on what is straight. Wrong one, sorry y'all. I pretty much just eyeball it on what is straight, but if you want to like break your ruler out, you are more than welcome to do that. I can't decide which one I want to be the front on here. I guess this one, since it's so pretty. Okay, so I'm just making sure they're lined up, and sometimes they, you need to bend them a little bit to make sure everything's perfectly straight before you do the binding. Something about liquid adhesives kind of warps things just slightly, no big deal, but just a little bit. Okay. There we go. Again, if you have like lines on your pattern paper that you're using, that's also really helpful for keeping your binding lined up. So I'm just going to stick a ruler right here. And let's see, I guess I'll go in a little bit further. Just using my fold mark to guide how big I wanted my binding to be. So I'm going to go right about there. So the back part will be liquid glue, and then for the front part, just so it holds immediately, I'll put the hot glue. And my honey is calling me, so as soon as I stick this down, I'm going to take a quick break. Okay, so we got that front one done, just like that, and then just kind of push it back here and make sure your glue is adhered down. Okay, now we're going to put the back part on. Now I do this one a little bit differently. I usually go to the inside like this. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to do the matchbox one. I don't have enough matchboxes. I'm going to have to go to the store, but I'm going to show you how to do it with what I have. Pretty basic. What I did is I cut my little strips of paper to cover the front of this. Mine were 1 1/4 by a little less than a 1/2 inch. I don't know if all matchboxes are the same, but I'm assuming they are. But just measure the front of your little matchbox book. And I'm just putting a little bit of glue, and I want to alternate the type of paper I'm putting on there. So I cut 2 out of the scraps I had from doing the covers of the books and stuff and the binding. I just used my scrap paper. I'm just adhering all of these down, and then when they're dry I will go in and distress them up a little bit, distress the edges. So just put this on the front of all of your books. Depending on how tall it is, you can kind of see how many matchboxes you will need. And I got these at Walmart, I do believe, and surprisingly they were in the cookware, like where the utensils are in Walmart. I couldn't find them anywhere else in the store, so I finally asked somebody, and they were where the utensils are. So if that helps anybody. I think I've got them all covered, minus this one. You can line the inside of yours if you want to. I'm not that picky. Actually, I may do that on this one because I am going to sell it. Or I'll paint the inside of it one. I'm not quite sure yet. But, you know, it doesn't really get seen. So now I'm going to grab my frayed burlap distress ink. And I'm going to distress it all the way around the front of that. You don't have to worry about the tops of it because they're all going to be glued together, and then the very top one that you'd be able to see, we're actually going to put chipboard on top of it, so it actually looks like a book. Just make sure everything's adhered down. And the matchbook one is actually the easiest one to do out of all of the books. So, and I'm just going to use hot glue. Works really good with anything paper. And all you're going to do, well wait, we got to put our little drawer pulls on there first. On Chris's I used brads. For this one I want to use something different on there, something more feminine. So I'm going to use the flat back pearls that Beverly has in her store, and I'm just going to use the white ones. Okay, and hot glue will work just fine to adhere anything like that. You don't need a really strong adhesive for anything plastic to like paper, but if you want to use another one, that's fine as well. I'm just going to use hot glue. All you're going to do is get them ready to stack on top of each other, making sure that the drawer part is facing upward. You don't want to glue it to where it's like that. So just line those all up and make sure your paper is facing the front. And you're going to adhere them on top of each other, keeping them as flat as you possibly can, and alternate the paper. If you want to use all one paper, that's fine as well. And again, hot glue works perfect for stuff like this. And I just put them on top of each other like that, and I just use my fingers to make sure everything is perfectly lined up, or you can put it down on a flat surface and push like that to make sure everything is even. Okay, and then just go with your next one, alternating the paper. Okay, once you have them all done, you are ready to adhere them to the inside of your book. Again, like I said, I do not have enough to do mine, so I'm just going to show you with what I do have. And all you're going to do is figure out where you want these to be on the inside of your book. I like mine to be just about right there with a little bit of that inside paper showing. And then you're just going to use hot glue again. And for now, I'm just going to adhere it down to one side because I want to be able to add more in there. But when you have all your matchboxes in there, you will put glue on this side as well and close it up. But for now, I'm just going to use hot glue. And be careful not to keep it forward, because on my last one I accidentally glued 2 of the drawers shut because the glue seeped in. So just do it on each little line, not going too far upwards where it'll seep into that little drawer area. And just place it down to where it's even, like that. And that is it. Now on my other one I created a hinged spine so that I could do things back here because I had all that space. I didn't do that on this one, but if you guys want to do that, that is an option. Okay, and then you would just put glue on this part and then shut your book, and it would go all the way down your drawers. But I'm going to wait because I have to go get more of the matchbooks. Now for the top part, what I did is I took a piece of chipboard and I measured it to fit about right here, and then this wide, and I place it on top of here. I can actually go ahead and do it now. Let me grab some chipboard. Okay, y'all, so I cut a piece of chipboard to fit on the inside of here, and I'm just going to adhere my designer paper on top of it and then place it there and glue it on top. So then from the back it looks like one book, you know, instead of just something on top of there and then this big gap right there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cover this with paper.